I suggest you clear your schedule for today and get comfortable. This might take a while. With Monday's character reveal out of the way, our roster is now sitting pretty at about 36 characters, give or take. We're already halfway through July and slowly easing our way towards the release of Super Smash Bros. For 3DS. If you want to know the final roster right away, you'll probably get your chance in September when the game releases in Japan. Or in August if CoroCoro actually is in fact going to show all the characters in their August issue. Otherwise, you can just sit back and wait with me until the game releases in North America in October. We do have time for a few more surprise announcements over the next several weeks, especially with the inevitable Nintendo Direct next month that will surely bring us yet another new and exciting trailer. So, while we're waiting, I thought now would be a pretty good time to give you a general guide on where I stand with everything character-wise at this point. Going from franchise to franchise, factoring in remaining veterans, what's left of the Gematsu leak, if it even still has a shred of credibility anymore, and building off from what I said about certain characters in my 10 character list that I made 4 months ago. My hope is that this will be my last major Smash Bros. Character video I make for a while, maybe even until the game's release. I'll still be following up with the latest announcements and reveals, and I'll be coming back to add annotations to this video as things change. Just keep in mind that these are, as always, just my opinions. I don't have any insider information, I'm just making educated guesses. And if I say something you don't agree with, don't worry, I've been wrong about this stuff far more times than I'd like to admit. So, grab a snack, a drink, and get comfy, because this is going to be a long one. I really don't think we'll be seeing any more Mario characters at this point. With Mario, Luigi, Peach, and Bowser, we have the 4 most important characters from that franchise. While there are still tons of potential characters, anyone after the main 4 is honestly just extra, not a necessity. I don't think we'll ever run out of good possible candidates for Mario, but there's just so many of them that they can't all be picked. Not all at once anyways. We have Rosalina now, and even though I had my hopes for Paper Mario, I think adding more than one Mario newcomer for this game alone just does not seem realistic. Mario may be the flagship franchise, but unlike Pokemon, which I'll get to later, there's no need to just throw in every single Mario extra. 1 or 2 is fine, but when it comes to importance, the 4 that we need are already here. As a side note, I won't be going in depth with Yoshi or Wario in this video, simply because I don't think they'll be getting any new characters at all. There are still potential extras, but there is nobody major that this game is lacking without. Why am I bringing them up in the Mario section, you ask? Well, they are still Mario characters, even though they have branched off and have their own games to represent. And with Wario, heck, he hasn't even been confirmed yet, and we're already talking about WarioWare characters? I do still think that characters like Toad or Bowser Jr. have the potential for assist trophies, and Dr. Mario would be lucky to make it as an alternate costume for regular Mario. But as for straight up newcomers for the Mario franchise, I think we're probably done after Rosalina. Then again, Fire Emblem could beg to differ. I still think there's a big possibility that we could see a new Donkey Kong character. Thanks to Retro Studios, Donkey Kong has really made a major comeback in recent years. I'd even go as far as to say that the growth the series has made since Brawl warrants it getting at least one more character. And I still think it's a toss-up between Dixie Kong and King K. Rool. It really could be either of them at this point. Dixie has her playable role in Tropical Freeze, being part of the Forbidden Seven, being yet another female, which pretty much guarantees you'll get in the game, and her hair-twirling moveset potential, all as reasons for her to be considered. And even though King K. Rool is the franchise's iconic villain that hasn't been prominent in well over 20 years, he's still arguably the fan favorite in this debate, and he has the Kremlings in Smash Run hinting at something. Playable character or stage boss, I'm confident that K. Rool is getting some kind of special treatment this time. I really don't think there's an obvious choice here. It really could be either one, and who could ultimately get chosen is really anyone's guess. Or, if the most recent reveal from Monday is anything to go by, there might even be a chance that we could get both. How great would that be? Everyone wins. Zelda is a little more difficult to analyze. I don't think there's much question that Ganondorf will come back. He's the main villain of the series, the holder to the third piece of the Triforce, and he's pretty much one of the biggest Nintendo villains there is next to Bowser and King Dedede. There's always the chance he could get some big change, such as a greater incorporation of Ganon, or at least an overhaul to his moveset. With the implementation of custom movesets especially, I don't think there's much of an excuse for him to remain as Captain Falcondorf any longer. But I don't see him just getting flat out cut. At least, not anymore. I had my doubts before, sure, but I've kind of changed my mind on that, and yes, I am allowed to do that. And now I do think Ganondorf will be returning in some fashion. In addition, I do think we're about due to get a Zelda newcomer. We've had Link, Zelda, Ganondorf, and a second variation of Link for 2 games now. I don't think it would hurt to add one more new face this time around. Even though Sheik is a separate character now, she technically doesn't count as a newcomer since she's been playable since Melee. I still advocate for Girahim, and at this point, I really think the only competition he has is Impa, since she's playable in Hyrule Warriors, and therefore she technically can use the same relevancy argument as he can. The only problem I see with Impa's chances are that I worry Hyrule Warriors is too recent of a game to get any sort of content for this iteration of Smash. We don't have any sort of gauge for how far ahead Sakurai is looking in terms of content to add for Smash Bros. Greninja's conception is proof that he does look ahead to future games and adds content from them even before they are released. But we just don't know how far ahead he's looking. If we see content from Super Mario 3D World, Mario Kart 8, or Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire in this iteration of Super Smash Bros., then I think it could be fair to say that Sakurai was familiar with Hyrule Warriors a long time ago, and therefore, I'll believe that Impa could very well have been chosen as the new Zelda character that we're waiting to see. Otherwise, my vote still lies with Girahim. To be fair, however, there still isn't any indication that we'll even be getting a Zelda newcomer at all this time around. For all we know, aside from Ganondorf returning, Sheik becoming separate from Zelda could be the only big change this franchise gets this time around. Only time will tell. I don't think there's much of a choice for Metroid characters at this moment. I believe that if we are going to get a Metroid newcomer at all, it has to be Ridley. But we all know why that's a touchy subject, and I'd rather not get into it at all in this video. I have stated this before, and I do still believe that if Ridley is not playable this time, then we won't be getting a Metroid newcomer at all. There are other characters from the franchise, like Rundus, but Ridley is the next major important character after Samus. I think we need to figure out what's going on with him first, before we start even talking about other Metroid characters. Other than getting Meta Knight back, I think we're about done when it comes to Kirby characters. We have the 3 biggest ones in the series already. As is the case with Mario, anyone after that just feels like extra or unnecessary padding for the roster. I know people still advocate for Bandana D, but he's the kind of padding I'm talking about. Yes, Waddle Dee is a highly recurring character in the Kirby series, but we already have him represented in Smash Run. The Toon Link Alfonso thing says that it's not impossible for more than one version of a character to appear in the game. Fair enough. But what would Bandana D offer as a staff wielder that Palutena or even Crystal couldn't do? I wouldn't mind seeing him as an assist trophy or something, but I think that once we get Meta Knight back, we'll have all the Kirby characters we need. And don't even try to tell me that Meta Knight is at risk of being cut just because he hasn't been revealed yet. There are a lot of veterans from Brawl that we still haven't seen yet, and he's one of Sakurai's babies. With all the love Kid Icarus is getting this time, I think Kirby of all franchises losing content is one of the last things we should be worrying about. Besides, did we all suddenly forget how broken Meta Knight was in Brawl? He probably needs a lot of work and revision done to him, possibly more than any other veteran. It should not come as much of a surprise to anyone that it's taking this long for him to get revealed. Or perhaps Meta Knight will be a secret character this time, and we won't see him before the game comes out. We'll just have to wait and see. I brought up my stance on the possibility of Star Fox getting another character when I listed Crystal in my 10 Wanted Characters video, and not much has changed since then. Even though Star Fox is finally getting a new game, judging from the teaser at E3, the game is still very early in development, so I highly doubt Sakurai could have found anything to pull from that game and use for Smash Bros. I am a little worried about Crystal's chances though, since we've seen very little content from Star Fox as a whole revealed for Smash Bros. At all at this point. All we have is Fox as a character, Andross as an assist trophy, and the Smart Bomb as an item. That's it. I think it's fair to guess that at least one more veteran from Star Fox will be returning, and a new stage is a given. But other than that, the severe lack of Star Fox content at all thus far makes me doubt that Crystal has much of a chance at this point. I don't think she's completely out of the question yet, but I'm feeling a lot less sure about her now than I was when I included her on my list. As I just said, I do think we'll be getting at least one more Star Fox veteran back, and between Falco and Wolf, I still think it's going to be Falco. He's been around in Smash Bros. Longer than Wolf has, and the way I look at it, Falco is to Fox what Luigi is to Mario. He is the second in command, the first major character after the main character. I think that gives Falco a lot more weight in his own franchise than Wolf. Now that's not to say that I think Wolf isn't important. Wolf still has just as much of a chance as coming back as Falco does, and he's still an important character in the Star Fox series. He could come back as well, or he could be replacing Falco altogether. Who knows? My vote still lies with Falco, however, and the one thing I am sure of is that Star Fox as a whole probably will not be getting that much of an increase in representation, if any at all. But if Crystal does in fact get in, I think it'll be because she's taking that spot from someone in her own series. For a series as small as Star Fox, I really don't think getting 4 characters for it is that likely at all. I can't believe there was even question of Captain Falcon's return. I mean, seriously? I know F-Zero is a small series, but the good Captain is an icon of Super Smash Bros. He's one of the first characters you probably think of when you think of this series. He's probably more iconic in Smash Bros. Than he is in F-Zero. That's kinda sad, actually. There was no way he was going to get dropped, okay? He's back. He's here. Let's calm down and move on. As for if F-Zero will get a newcomer, probably not. F-Zero is such a small series. It's been off the scene for a long time now. There's always a chance we'll get another F-Zero game someday, but for now, I really don't think this franchise needs anything more than Captain Falcon. Yeah, I know, what about Black Shadow? He was on my character list, yes, but thinking about Black Shadow now, I liked what he could offer to the roster more than I liked him as a character. I won't be all torn up inside if he doesn't make it. I can't say I care about him that much, to be quite honest. I think we could use another villain, and he'd make more sense of a clone of Captain Falcon than Ganondorf would, but I don't think he's absolutely necessary to get in the roster. I think other franchises like Donkey Kong, Kid Icarus, and Fire Emblem are in greater need of more characters than F-Zero is. These are franchises that have had big, notable, recent, and successful games. That's why I think it makes sense to get Palutena and Robin and Lucina this time. But F-Zero? Well, get another game first, and then we'll talk characters. Oh boy. Pokemon is always such a mess. It seems like I always spend the longest amount of time on this franchise in particular, but that's because it's a series that is always changing with its character lineup in Smash, and it's always littered with controversy and debate. I'll try to keep this as organized as possible, but I can't promise it'll be short. At this moment, for Pokemon characters we have Pikachu, Lucario, Charizard, and Greninja. That's 4. However, Pokemon has had more than 4 characters in the past, specifically 6 in Brawl. Therefore, I do still believe that we will be getting 6 Pokemon characters once again. I know some people might be irritated by the fact that Pokemon has more characters than Mario, in that case, but let's talk about it for a second. Brawl did in fact have 6 Pokemon characters, and Mario only had 4, so it already had more characters than Mario. I don't see why Pokemon having more characters than Mario is suddenly an issue now. And don't even try to tell me that Pokemon Trainer only counted as 1 character because of slots. The trainer concept was 1 character, sure, but Squirtle, Ivysaur, and Charizard were 3 separate unique characters. They all had individual movesets, character models, animations, hitboxes, and voice clips. They each had to be developed separately just like any other character before they could be glued together into the trainer gimmick. Slots do not exist. That's just a term people throw around to describe the number of portraits on the character select screen. It does not accurately dictate how many characters are actually in the game. If Pokemon Trainer only counted as 1 character because of slots, then I guess Zero Suit Samus wasn't a real character in Brawl just because she wasn't immediately visible on the character select screen. Isn't that right? Slots. Sakurai states that Brawl had 39 characters. That's 39 separate movesets that took time and resources to develop, and the fact of the matter is that you cannot reach that number unless you count Sheik, Zero Suit Samus, and the trainer's 3 Pokemon all as separate characters. Therefore, I argue that Pokemon has already had 6 characters before. It's already had more than Mario, and if it continues to have 6 once again, it really would not be as much of a stretch as I think people are trying to make it out to be. So what if Pokemon has more characters than Mario? Is there a written rule that says it can't, or that each series can only have 4 characters? If so, show it to me, because I'd love to see it. Besides, with Mario, we already have the 4 most important main characters. As I said before, anyone after that is just extra. With Pokemon, it's not that easy because there is no main character. We've got the mascot, the traditional mainstay, and the rest are just notably more popular out of all 719 possible choices. And because there's so many to choose from and consider in order to faithfully represent this franchise, I think it's okay for Pokemon to have more characters than other franchises. It's certainly not lacking in relevancy, popularity, or financial success. I'm not trying to upplay Pokemon as a superior franchise. I just think that unlike other Nintendo properties, Pokemon is a bit more difficult to translate into Smash Bros. Than people realize. Now, if we were to go beyond 6 playable characters to something like 8, excluding the possibility of DLC, then yeah, I can understand why people might be feeling a bit iffy about that, as we might be starting to go a little overboard with Pokemon at that point. But for now, I'm predicting that there will be 6. However, that leads into the problem of who to pick, because we already have 4 confirmed characters, and there are far more than just 2 Pokemon left to choose from. But let's just go through our candidates one at a time. Plusle and Minun were supposedly part of the Forbidden 7 for Brawl, but the problem is that not only did they not actually make it into Brawl, there's no real confirmation that Mai actually was Plusle and Minun in the first place. That has always just been a widely accepted rumor among the fanbase, so I think these guys are out. Pichu was cut after Melee, and while every character has its fans, Generation 2 has long since passed. I don't think it's very likely we'll see Pichu make a return anytime soon, so he's out. Now watch him be announced next just to spite me. Sceptile, I barely understand where this one even comes from. I get it, he's a Gen 3 rep and we've got Gen 3 remakes coming out soon that he could promote. But the way I see it, Sceptile is in the same boat as Impa with Hyrule Warriors. We don't know how far ahead Sakurai is looking forward when looking for future games to pull content from. We don't know how long he's known about Hyrule Warriors, or in this case, Alpha Ruby and Omega Sapphire, nor do we know how much he knew about these games before they were officially revealed to the public. Even if Sakurai knew about Alpha and Omega a long time ago, I really don't think he had a slot for a Gen 3 Pokemon in mind when he was deciding on the roster. He's never had a slot for a Gen 3 one before, so why would he have one now? We know he had a slot for a Gen 6 Pokemon long before X and Y came out, and that's how he chose Greninja. But there's no indication that anything like that has been planned for a Gen 3 Pokemon way back before X and Y. Hell, we don't even know when Alpha and Omega left the concept stage and actually went on to actually start development. People also like to argue that Sceptile would complete this elemental trinity by being the grass starter next to Charizard with fire and Greninja with water. But my problem with this idea is that this little theory is something the fans have made up for this game. There's no proof that this pattern legitimately exists, or that it matters to Sakurai at all. We didn't have fire, water, or grass Pokemon playable in N64 Smash or Melee, and the only reason we had them in Brawl was because Pokemon Trainer was a special case. But Charizard and Greninja weren't put in just because they were fire and water types. Their actual reasons for inclusion are much more important than that, so I don't see why Sceptile being a grass starter means anything substantial for his chances. To be fair though, I do think that having a Gen 3 Pokemon character could help balance out the lineup by giving us more than just pure love and pandering to Gen 1. We'd at least have generations 1, 3, 4, and 6 represented in Smash, but that's really the only good thing I could see coming from Sceptile's inclusion. I could be wrong, and maybe Sakurai was considering a Gen 3 Pokemon all this time, just like he was considering a Gen 6 one. We have no way of knowing for sure at this time, so we'll just have to wait and see. Jigglypuff, I think, is... Hey! What are you doing here? I've already talked about you enough, okay? Now you just get out of here. Go. Shoot! Out! You can come back into the video when you get confirmed, but until then, you just stay over there where I can't see you. That's right. Shoo! Sorry about that. Now I'm starting to see why people are getting annoyed by him. As I was saying, Jigglypuff, I think, is still the most likely one to return out of all of these characters simply because of tradition. She's been in every game since the beginning, but the problem I have with Jigs is that seniority in Smash is really all she has left. Sure, I hear people say that she has popularity in Japan, but a lot of Pokemon that have been in Smash have had some major degree of popularity in Japan as well. Charizard, Greninja, Lucario, and Mewtwo are all popular too. Isn't that why they were chosen in the first place? Jigglypuff doesn't exactly have that market cornered to herself. If we're bringing the anime into consideration, Jigglypuff hasn't been relevant in the anime since the Johto days, and that was what, Season 3? And we're on Season 17, right? Yeah, a lot of time has passed, and if anything, Meowth is still more relevant to the anime than Jigglypuff is.
Oh, but Jigglypuff is a fairy type, so she could have some new moves, right?
Sure, she can use Dazzling Gleam maybe, but what else? I mean, she can't learn Moonblast, so she can't use that as a final Smash or anything. Besides, if we were to get a fairy-type Pokemon for Smash, would you really want it to be Jigglypuff over someone else like Gardevoir or something? Look, I know there are a lot of people that still like Jigglypuff, and that's fine. I'm not trying to trash your favorite character. I'm just saying that I think the Pokemon section is starting to get a little crowded. Hypothetically, if we were to get Pikachu, Charizard, Mewtwo, and Jigglypuff in the game, that's 4 Pokemon representing the first generation, and I notice a lot of people are starting to think that maybe that's a little unfair to the other generations. So if all Jigglypuff has to justify her returning is tradition when the other ones have more than that, then maybe it's time to let go of some of these traditions when they don't make much sense anymore. Jigglypuff's popularity and relevancy peaked around the time of the first Smash Bros., and it was convenient for her because she could be easily copied from Kirby's model. But by the time Melee came around, her spot was already questionable, and her inclusion has only become more and more awkward since then. Pokemon has changed a lot over the years, and there are just so many possible Pokemon now that could fit much better in Smash Bros. If people only want Jigglypuff around just because she's always been around and nothing more than that, maybe it's time to let her go. But that's not to say that she wouldn't make for fitting DLC. She could still come back as DLC if she were not included. And to the people who say that it's practically unthinkable to cut any of the original 12, consider this. Ness was already being considered to be cut for Lucas before Brawl, so if that's anything to go by, being a veteran doesn't automatically mean Sakurai will never think of cutting any of them. I mean, we still don't know if Ness is returning, if Lucas is returning, if it's both, or if one of them is getting cut. I mean, what if Ness gets cut for Lucas this time? It's just a thought. I'm not necessarily saying that Ness is in danger. I think he still has a great chance. But you can never be too sure of anything here. I know what you're going to say.
How can you say Ness and Jigglypuff are in danger when Captain Falcon wasn't?
Well, that's because Captain Falcon is the only F-Zero character we have. If we were to lose him, F-Zero loses all its representation on the roster. If Ness or Jigglypuff get cut, there's still Lucas and all the other Pokemon to represent Mother/Earthbound and Pokemon. These franchises will still be there without these two characters because they aren't representing their franchises all by themselves, unlike Captain Falcon. I'm not trying to scare anyone, or I'm not trying to tell people that the original 12 is definitely losing some characters. I still think Jigglypuff is the safest guess for one of our remaining Pokemon reveals. But then again, there's still no guarantee that everyone from Brawl is coming back, and tradition doesn't mean Sakurai can't ever consider cutting her. As for Squirtle and Ivysaur, I still want them back, and it's really going to hurt if they're gone because I loved Pokemon Trainer to death, but I really only think that there's 2 spots left with plenty of competition, and we've had a lot of Gen 1 representation as it is, so something's gotta give here. I have a feeling we won't see them unless there's going to be character DLC, and I don't even like talking about DLC since we don't even know for a fact that this game will have it, and it's just a big huge mess, and I've talked about Pokemon for far too long. It's time to move on. I already mentioned Ness and Lucas when I talked about Jigglypuff back in the Pokemon section, but I just want to clear something up real quick. I do think Ness has a really great chance of coming back. I do. I think his chances are still as good as Captain Falcon's were, and that there is no real reason to panic right now. But there's always that small, teeny tiny little chance that Sakurai could decide to cut him this time. It's a small chance, it is, but let's not forget who we're dealing with here. This guy is unpredictable. As for Lucas, I really don't know what to think about him. I don't see that much of a reason to cut him. He was kind of a clone, but we've got Toon Link and Lucina already, so clones are still kind of a thing. His franchise is small, and unlike with Pokemon, he's not really creating any problems for any other characters to get in. I mean, he's not holding up any room or any space or anything. But I don't think he's safer than Ness. Whether Lucas stays or not is really difficult to say with any sort of confidence, and I think we're just going to have to wait and see with this one. Best possible scenario, I think, is that we get both Ness and Lucas back, and that they play much more differently from each other than they did in Brawl. Also, I just don't think there's much of a chance we'll see an Earthbound or Mother newcomer. At least not until we know for sure that both Ness and Lucas are back. Remember earlier this week when I said I'd have to go back and update something for this video after Monday's character reveal? Yeah, Fire Emblem is why. We now have 4 Fire Emblem characters, none of which are Chrom, which is a major upset for Gematsu, but I'll get to that later. This is all great news. Fire Emblem has jumped from 2 reps to 4. That's fantastic. I mean, Robin brings some variety by not being a blue-haired pure swordsman, and even though Lucina is a clone of Marth, she makes sense to be a clone considering her role in Fire Emblem Awakening, when you think about it. I think this is great for Fire Emblem fans, and I think these are great new characters. Maybe I'll get around to playing Fire Emblem Awakening sometime, who knows. I imagine though that after this recent announcement, we're probably done for Fire Emblem characters. It's great that we have 4 now, it really is, but I don't think we're going to get any more than that. I mean, there's still the chance of Roy, maybe? Nah, Lucina is our new Roy. It's really hard to guess where we'll go from here in terms of miscellaneous characters. No retro character that has appeared in Super Smash Bros. Thus far has ever been cut. So it's pretty hard to picture Ice Climbers, Mr. Game & Watch, or even Rob randomly getting dropped from the roster. It's still possible, but we just don't know at this point. That being said, the majority of the newcomers we've seen so far come representing their own franchises, so it's actually hard for me to picture us getting more than even one more retro or WTF character, given all that we have so far. Like before with Yoshi and Wario, I'm bunching Kid Icarus here with another franchise with the miscellaneous characters, because I think that all we're getting is Pit and Palutena. Sakurai does love this franchise though, so there might be a third character. I mean, we still don't know what's going on with Dark Pit, but we'll see. I want to believe that we have our 2 Kid Icarus characters though. But getting back to the retros, I think our best scenario is having Ice Climbers, Rob, and Mr. Game & Watch, who, after Pac-Man's trailer, I'm pretty sure he's guaranteed to come back. I see them all coming back in, and at most, one more retro character. As for who that could be, who knows? Maybe it's Takamaru, maybe, but who knows? Otherwise, I think we'll just continue to see newcomers from more modern Nintendo properties. I think we're going to be done with retro, and I think now we're kind of gravitating towards having more modern Nintendo franchises that don't have representation in Smash yet. Franchises like Xenoblade with Shulk, maybe? I don't know, man, Shulk, I think you're all that Komatsu has left at this point. Okay, third-party characters. I think this is probably it after Pac-Man. We've already got 3, and they're huge characters at that. It's hard to picture anyone else who could come in that would be of the same caliber and class as Mega Man, Sonic, or Pac-Man. Rayman could have been cool, but all we know so far is that he's a trophy. If he were playable, I doubt Sakurai would have shown us his trophy before revealing him. I hope they do more with Rayman though. I mean, come on, you have the rights to use him. Ubisoft gave you a 3D model. Why not make him an assist trophy or something? You're killing me here, Sakurai. Sora, I'm pretty sure will not be in it. But who cares? I can just make a Sword Fighter Mii of him. I'm good with that. Geno, no. Just, no. Maybe as a trophy, maybe after Rayman, but playable? No, I doubt it. One other common suggestion I see a lot amongst the community is the possibility of more Sonic characters. If any third-party franchise has candidates for more characters, it's Sonic. But Sakurai likes to make his third-party choices special. Having Tails and Knuckles and Amy and Shadow or whatever kind of takes away from the magic of having Sonic in Smash Bros. I know this is his second appearance now, but I still think it's too early to start digging into more Sonic characters or even another Sega character. If we get to a point where there aren't any other big choices for third parties left to put in Smash, then and only then I think it would be okay to maybe add Tails or Knuckles or something. But as of right now, for this installment of Smash, I think it's too early for that. The only character left to really talk about is if Snake is coming back or not. Right now, things are not looking the best for him. Kojima says he hasn't spoken to Sakurai about bringing him back, and several elements of Snake's moves seem to be incorporated in other characters already in the game. Sheik has that grenade attack, the Steel Diver item shoots a missile similar to Snake's side special, and Zero Suit Samus's final smash is identical to his. At this point, I wouldn't blame people for giving up on Snake coming back. But while I'm not necessarily arguing otherwise, I can't say I fully believe that he's been cut yet. The most obvious reason being is that we don't have an official confirmation of that from Sakurai himself. Sure, Kojima doesn't sound too confident in Snake coming back, but like he said, he's not working on the game. And if Snake is in, how do we know he isn't lying about it as part of a non-disclosure agreement or something? If Snake isn't in the game, I want to hear it from Sakurai himself, but since he probably wouldn't just come right out and say that a certain character isn't in the game, the only way we'll find out for sure is when the game comes out and the final roster is revealed. If we don't see him in the roster then, that's when we'll know he got cut. But my point is that all the arguments for or against Snake's inclusion are all just speculation. Nobody has any concrete answers. All the people who say he shouldn't fit in because he doesn't belong as a Nintendo character, that should have kept him out of Brawl, and it didn't, so I don't see why that has any more importance now. For all we know, Snake could be in the game and Kojima could just be lying to keep it a surprise. He is just as much of a troll as Sakurai is. I just find it odd that Kojima says he hasn't even talked to his supposed friend about this. If he had said something like, maybe Snake is in the game, or oh, we'll have to wait and see, then maybe it wouldn't be so suspicious. But the fact that Kojima claims he has not even talked to Sakurai about this makes me a little suspicious. I've decided to draw this video to a close by giving my thoughts about the Gematsu leak. And since this video has gone on for much too long, I'll try to keep it brief. Gematsu has gotten a lot right, and there's always a chance that it could be correct about more of its information like Shulk or the Chorus Men. However, I think Rosalina and now Chrom are proof that not everything that Gematsu says is going to be true, so continue to take it with a grain of salt. There's still a chance it could be right about some of its remaining information, but I think we now have the right to be skeptical towards it now, since it has already gotten some of its facts wrong. One last thing. Just because there's a Rhythm Heaven enemy in Smash Run doesn't automatically confirm Chorus Men or Choir Boys or whatever the hell they're called that they're in the game. It is possible for franchises to be represented in Smash Bros. Without a playable character. Case in point, the Hand and Bow stage in Brawl. And if Chrom is just part of a final Smash, how do we know that Chorus Men aren't an assist trophy or something? Just some food for thought. And with that, my predictions about what's left of the roster is complete. And boy, it was a doozy, wasn't it? I believe our next possible reveal will be in August through a Nintendo Direct, and if that's the case, it'll be interesting to see how my guesses stack up to it. We're halfway through July, and in less than 3 months, the next installment of Super Smash Bros. Will finally be upon us. It's getting pretty exciting, isn't it? Especially when you realize that once we all start going back to school and college and stuff, August and September will fly right by. Trust me, it won't be long now. You know, assuming they don't delay the game again. Alright guys, thanks for anyone who managed to survive me talking this long and sticking with me until the end. I'll see you guys next time. This has been Brawmastro12 signing off to get a throat lozenge because my voice is dead.